Welcome. My name is Yakir Manella, and as the CEO of Chazon and Pearlstone, I am thrilled to welcome you all to the Big Bold Jewish Climate Fest. Really happy to be here and so grateful to the incredible team of staff and volunteers and partner organizations that have made this entire fest possible, and this session in particular. Huge thanks to my colleagues at Chazon, Libba Cooper, Bruce Spear, and the founder and CEO of Darim Online, Lisa Colton, the incredible team leaders at the Jewish Youth Climate Movement, our friends at Dayenu, Hillel, the Jewish Federations of North America, and all the great partners and sponsors that made the fest such a great success, have made it, and will continue to be a success over the coming days. Our session today is entitled Jewish Federations Leading on Climate. And before we jump in, just want to provide a little bit of context here. Chazon and Pearlstone, you may have heard, are merging. Chazon, the largest faith-based environmental organization in the country, and Pearlstone, the largest Jewish retreat center and Jewish outdoor food farming and environmental education site in the country. And together, we are leading a movement deeply weaving sustainability into the fabric of Jewish life, connecting people with the earth and with each other, and inspiring communal change. By scaling immersive, transformative experiences, impactful Jaffe programs, and climate action initiatives, we catalyze culture change and behavior change across the Jewish world and beyond. And in preparation for today's session, not only have I had a chance to work in partnership with our friends at the Associated, the Baltimore Federation, but having connected with our other panelists today and federations around the country, I've also really come to appreciate the work of the Jewish Federations of North America. And looking on their website, you can see the tagline, building flourishing Jewish communities in your hometown and around the world. I think it's a really powerful mission. I'm sure everybody on the call agrees, as I believe this is a group of folks that care about federations and the important work federations do. And the climate crisis is hugely impacted when we think about flourishing Jewish communities all around the world. How do we build that? How do we protect them? And I certainly here in Baltimore have a huge venue and view on that in the Pearlstone Associated relationship. And Chazon also has strong relationships with UJA New York and the Federation in Detroit and Vancouver and across the Federation system, and hopefully others soon. We're really proud to work with the Rhode Island Federation, federations of all sizes. And this really is a top priority for us and focus area moving forward in terms of education, in terms of action, working with Jewish Federations of North America and local federations all across the country, and really grateful for the wonderful staff support from folks at local federations and at Jewish Federations of North America to work with us and to lean into this issue. And so we arrive at this session. The federation leaders we're going to hear from today are driving impactful climate action, reducing carbon footprints while saving money and increasing communal engagement. So we're going to hear 3 case studies from a diverse set of communities, and then together think about what models are most replicable and how we can accelerate the pace of change across the federation system. We're here to learn. We're here to learn about models, and we're here to imagine together. And even at the end of the session, we're going to do a little bit of a focus group where we hear from everybody on today's call what your perspective is and how we can accelerate this pace of change. Joining me for today's conversation, 3 wonderful leaders. Really grateful to each of you. First, Shelly Rivkin, Vice President at Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. Shelly has many years of experience working with a wide range of community organizations and stakeholders on a variety of issues that respond to and address community needs. She oversees the Vancouver Federation's central planning and grants distribution processes. And since joining Jewish Federation in 2007, Shelly has worked collaboratively with partner agencies and community volunteers on initiatives ranging from day school education, youth at risk, community security, and environmental sustainability. Thank you so much, Shelly, for being here today. Next, we have Adam Greenman, President and CEO of the Jewish Alliance of Greater Rhode Island. Adam is, in that role, leads an organization focused on creating a strong, vibrant, inclusive community for all Jewish Rhode Island. Prior to joining the Alliance in August 2017, Adam spent 8 years at United Way of Rhode Island in various leadership roles, most recently as Executive Vice President for Community Investment. He lives in Pawtucket with his wife and 2 daughters. And last but not least, Mark Smolars, Chief Operating and Financial Officer at the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore. Prior to joining the associate in February 2004, Mark started his career with Ernst & Young and then moved to similar positions as he does now for two healthcare organizations in the Baltimore City public school system. He's also served on many other nonprofit boards over the years, Healthcare for the Homeless and the Baltimore Trees Trust, because Mark cannot get enough of pushing and supporting sustainability measures. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mark, for being here today. So we're going to jump into presentations. We're going to hear for a few minutes from each of our panelists. We'll have some questions, just a couple questions for me, and then eager to open the floor and hear from all of you in the room, your questions and comments. And then we'll again jump into a little bit of a focus group conversation at the end. So for the opening conversation from each panelist, we're going to hear about their community and their federation, the overall goals, strategies, and priorities. Learn about the climate initiatives you've undertaken, how those initiatives fit into your broader goals, and what are the benefits and challenges related to those initiatives. Really excited to hear from you both. We're going to start with Shelly first, then move to Adam, and finally to Mark. Shelly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's a real honor and privilege to be part of this panel. So the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver engaged in a strategic visioning process in 2016. And we knew that we had to start to do things differently. So we identified 4 key areas where we wanted to expand our role and really change the type of reach that we had. So we focused on flexibility, innovation, diversity, and partnerships. And through these strategic visions, we started to change how we did our work. And one of the first areas that I think that is relevant to sustainability is we engaged in a joint task force around food security. So we started to shift from a traditional charity model to a broader perspective of food security that also considered the environment. As many of you might know, Vancouver and British Columbia have been very seriously impacted by climate this past year. Not only did we have the heat dome in the summer and extensive wildfires, we went through something that I learned is now called atmospheric rivers, where we experienced extensive floods. And if this past year was not a dramatic statement of the importance of climate change, I don't know what is. I would like to say that our engagement in climate change was purposeful, but in fact, it was more serendipitous. So about 18 months ago, the city of Vancouver launched their climate change plan, and they were looking for partners, and they were looking for partners from faith-based organizations. And several of our synagogues were approached. And rather than individual synagogues respond, the rabbis felt it would be more important to have a collective statement. And they reached out to Jewish Federation. What is our opinion? What is our statement? What is our framework on climate change? And we realized we didn't have one. So our initial intent was really to bring a group of synagogue representatives together with an outside facilitator to develop a values-based framework on climate change that embedded Jewish texts, Jewish values, and traditions. So we brought a group together. We invited several subject matter experts to join us. And first of all, we were incredibly impressed by the work that the synagogues were already doing and the expertise around the table. But as we engaged in this process of drafting a statement, people were saying to us, it's fine to have a statement, but we want to do something. We want tachlis, we want reality. And so we started to talk about what would be meaningful in our community. And it made sense at that point to bring Hazon to the table. And through our discussions with Hazon, we have now developed a 3-part strategy. So the first part, which we're hoping to launch within a few weeks, is to have 10 of our communal agencies engage in a year-long education awareness and leadership training initiative, which will be undertaken by Hazon. The second piece of this initiative, which I think is the action piece, is that each of the participating institutions will be trained to conduct an environmental audit. And each institution will determine what the focus of the audit will be, whether that will be on their building envelope whether that will be on some of their practices, whether it might be on how they do Kiddush, whatever each participant wants to do, that will be the focus. And then the third part, which is going to take Federation more time, is we want to launch green grants. And this is to assist our partner agencies implement the action that they've set out. So that we're new. We're not anywhere as advanced as the other two panelists, and we are learning along the way. But I feel very proud of what we're trying to achieve, and I think it aligns very much with key components of our strategic visioning process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Really, really grateful for our partnership and for your leadership and everyone in Vancouver really leaning into this work, and we're really excited to work with you moving forward. We're now going to turn to Adam and learn about the great work that you're leading in Rhode Island. Thank you so much, Adam, for being here.
Thank you. And it is wonderful to be here, wonderful to talk about this work. And, you know, I was struck as Shelly was talking and speaking about how Vancouver has been affected by climate change. I was getting ready to do this presentation to talk about how, as the ocean state, Rhode Island is uniquely at risk for climate. But as Shelly was talking, it really is stark to think about we all have this risk. We all are in this place where climate is something that we need to be thinking about and need to be building resilient communities and addressing it through no matter where we are in this country or in this world. I have the privilege to lead the Alliance, which is not only a federation, but a JCC, our Community Relations Council, our local Jewish newspaper, and a variety of other elements that make up traditional Jewish communities. And so our role, being that varied, has given us a lot of opportunities to really focus on climate in different ways, and in ways that impact not only our organization, but the entire Jewish community here in Greater Rhode Island. And also having the unique ability to impact the entire state, being that we are so small. Within our role as the Alliance, we see convening our community as a big piece of that. And a few years ago, we launched a strategic planning process, not unlike what Shelly and the folks in Vancouver did, really asking our community, where do you want us to focus? And Jake's going to put up a slide now, because I'd much rather have you look at a beautiful solar array than at me. During that strategic process, we listened, and what came out of that was a variety of priorities, two of which being really, really key to the work we do. So we heard from our community that they wanted Jewish agencies and synagogues to collaborate more. And we also heard from them that they really want the Alliance to help support and build connections between Jews throughout the community, and to create better connections with each other, to create better connections with all of the different agencies and synagogues that exist. But embedded in that was the how do you do that? And one of the key things we heard was that they want the Alliance, they want our Jewish community to come together and lead on areas of social action and on social responsibility, with climate being a core element of that. And so within our strategic plan, which we launched about 1.5 years ago, is a goal around climate. Specifically, we measure that by the number of Jewish agencies and synagogues that have the Hazon seal of sustainability. And I promised Yakir this would not be an advertisement for the great work that Hazon does, but it's hard to divorce the work they do from how we've been approaching our climate strategy. And so one of the things in the Alliance getting our Hazon seal of sustainability was really looking at what are the things big and small that we can be doing to impact climate, and how can we think about those not just through the scope and the context of our own organization, but in collaboration with others as well, and in building connections to others and throughout our community. And so that Hazon seal was really a first step for us at the Alliance. It led us to putting in bottle fill water stations throughout our JCC. It led us to engaging with a local composting organization to have a composting site here at the JCC. Our staff began engaging in environmental service projects to better connect themselves and connect us to other organizations outside of the Jewish community and within the Jewish community. We began doing e-cycling events for the community where they could drop off their e-waste here at the Alliance. And because we are connected to the Community Relations Council, we also engage in quite a bit of legislative advocacy around the issue of climate. But I think by far the biggest thing that we've been working on and that we've been able to do and actually just became live as of January 1st, which is really exciting, was our work on remote net metering and specifically offsite solar. And so we were looking at a variety of ways where we could get our 100% of our electricity from renewable sources. And the one that worked best for us, we have a 80,000 square foot facility here in Providence, Rhode Island, and our roof just isn't big enough to be able to support us getting 100% of our energy from renewables here in the state. And so we began looking at offsite solar options. And remote net metering is one of those things where you work with a private developer and you sell your solar credits to them. So your offsite solar is providing you with energy savings while also allowing you to have 100% of your energy come from renewable sources. And also there's no upfront cost to you as the organization. The developer assumes those upfront costs, understanding that through a 20-year agreement, they're going to recoup those costs through the energy savings credits and the energy that your solar panels are producing. And so this was one of those things for us that really felt like a no-brainer. We were able to enter an agreement with the developer where we're now saving about $45,000 a year. We're going to be saving on our energy costs while also getting 100% of our energy, 100% of our electricity, I should say, from solar and from renewable sources. But that goal of collaboration was really critical for us. And so because of our negotiating power, we were able to negotiate the same positive rate for any Jewish agency or synagogue throughout the state that wanted to be a part of this project. And so we worked with them, with all the Jewish agencies and synagogues, explained to them what we were doing, how we were leading on this, and how we encouraged them to join in with us, because while their size wasn't as large, they would be able to realize the same level of benefit by being part of this Jewish community that we are because of the size and scope of the Alliance. And so, as I said, that project, that solar field, which is located on a brownfield site, so it wouldn't have been able to be redeveloped for anything else, created a win-win for us. And that site just came online January 1st. And so we're now, as of then, getting 100% of our electricity from solar sources, which is terrific and by far the biggest climate action we've taken so far. And to be able to do it in collaboration with our other Jewish partners, and to be able to connect people to these opportunities to engage in this kind of work has been really, really beneficial for us and something I'm really, really proud of.
Thank you so much, Adam. Really impressive and inspiring to see. Really, really exciting stuff. And sounds like we're just a few days in here to the solar working, and 100% solar federation, really a powerful model to think about, having achieved that in one place in 2022, where could we be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, across the country. So thank you, Adam, for your leadership. And now I want to turn it over to Mark Smolars, and thank you for your partnership and leadership here in Baltimore. Mark?
Thanks, Yakir. It's amazing to hear the stories in Vancouver and Rhode Island, and that there's other communities that are doing things that we've done. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the story in Baltimore. Waiting for slides. I have 4 slides, and the first slide is just one of those calming slides. So we'll go to the next slide. Jacob, if you can go to the next slide. Great. So one thing that I learned way early in my career, one person can make a difference. And I think that's really important to note, that that a person can make things happen. So some of you may know Rachel Siegel. She was our VP of campaign back in 2007. Today, she is now the Chief Development Officer for Khazone. So she is living this efforts. But she came to me one day in 2007, said, Mark, we really got to be a little more sustainable. And we started with the basic stuff of, eliminating plastic water bottles, recycling trash, and so forth. But we then formed a system-wide greening task force. And we got into some more of the heavier things like using technology to reduce paper. So we're not so dependent on cutting trees down, but to keep trees. And also save some costs in terms of mailings and going more to emails and social media. We also did energy audits of all of our agencies and facilities, and we implemented the findings. So we're reusing utilities to the best extent, and that led to some projects which I'll get into in a minute. Next slide. So, 15 years ago, and I would even say today, people don't think that doing things sustainable is saving us money, but green is green. And as a chief financial officer, I can assure you that even 15 years ago, it made sense. And people today are just thinking that greening efforts just don't add to the bottom line. They do add to the bottom line, and we'll get into that a little bit. So out of this greening task force, we hired a part-time director of sustainability who oversaw our sustainability initiatives in education and worked with our Baltimore Jewish Council, which is our advocacy arm, on just carrying out education and advocacy efforts. We have moved this greening task force from the Federation to Pearlstone, because the Federation really shouldn't be involved in programming. We wanted to move it to our most cool agency, which is Pearlstone. I can see Yak here smiling when I said he's cool. And so we have done that, and they have been they actually have been their own director of sustainability. They also have a green task force. Myself and my VP of facilities assist in the process, as we'll get into with the Green Loan Fund. So back in 2009, and I wish I could remember the history of it, but we were able to engage an anonymous donor, a foundation, who wanted to work with us on providing an interest-free green loan fund to our constituents in our area. And at the beginning, we only had $100,000 to work with. And so a lot of the first projects that we did were smaller projects, mostly around lighting, where we did partnerships with Baltimore Gas and Electric to transform lighting to be way more efficient. And the return on investment of those projects were like 1.5 years. And they made a lot of sense. We did a lot of those kind of projects. But we then, with our success, the foundation decided to increase the amount of dollars in the Green Loan Fund, and went from 100,000 to 200,000. And then just a couple of years ago went to 500,000. And this has enabled us to take on more significant projects, HVAC projects, as well as taking on solar roof projects. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll give you some more things on the Green Loan Fund. So since 2007, we've made 18 interest-free loans throughout the community, both internally within the Federation system, but also to many day schools and synagogues. And the projects started mostly as lighting upgrades, but also now have included HVAC upgrades. And our most recent project of a year ago is a solar roof on a very large synagogue in Baltimore, which has been very successful to date. Our aggregate amount loaned out is just about $900,000. We've had no defaults, and our cumulative projected savings since the projects were completed have been $1.5 million to date. So we're excited about the Green Loan Fund and the fact that we have now increased to the 500,000. We're starting some more marketing efforts to actually get more projects out on the street, so to speak. And then in the last slide, similar to Adam, we have done a rooftop solar farm. Pearlstone has their own solar project on top of some of their housing or some of their housing units. They just did that, which saves them money. But then across the system, we have done a rooftop solar farm that we just entered into over some warehousing space in Baltimore County. It's going to actually cover 50% of all of our buildings, so over 500,000 square feet of buildings. And we expect at least $100,000 in savings just in eliminating of delivery charges. And we're hopeful that on the pricing, we'll get more dollars as well. Back to you, Yakir.
So I have a couple of questions, but already some great questions have started coming in from the great audience. We have a great big group here, so really appreciate everybody sending in questions. Please continue to do so. And I'm going to start with one question and jump in. You know, anybody can jump in on this. First one from Scott Lewis. Have any of these federations? From Scott Lewis. All three of these federations are in communities that may be significantly impacted by sea level rise due to climate change, as many Jewish communities will be. How are we preparing for this? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
So I'll start. I think one of the amazing things about our community is that there is so much activism and advocacy in the environmental field. And many of the committee members that sit around our table are also connected and associated with these organizations. So one of our goals is really enhancing our partnerships. So I think that the discussion about climate change, and in particular, the issue of rising sea levels, is one that's very relevant to our community and to our committee. I believe that the way that we will proceed is with enhanced partnerships and really building on both the expertise of people in our community that are involved in other organizations and these organizations themselves.
Thank you, Shelly. Really appreciate that.
I'll just jump in here and echo that while we may not have the answers on this yet, because it's still one of those problems that feels so existential, the synagogue I belong to is literally right on the water. And so this isn't something that is we need to think about this because it's going to happen 15 years from now. I mean, there are synagogues and agencies in our community that are one big flood away from seeing the effects of climate change firsthand. And so it is something that is part of our agenda. We work legislatively with partners in the environmental community locally to build out that kind of legislative agenda every year that does focus on how can we as an entire state of Rhode Island address some of these larger challenges that the Jewish community alone can't handle on our own.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, moving on to the next question here from Paul Solon. Are federations doing anything to encourage organizations to make communal meals vegan or to promote vegan adjacent diets? And maybe just to frame the question, there's a really important climate relevance here. If folks haven't read We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer, a really powerful testimony to the integration between the Jewish experience, the American Jewish experience, and the climate crisis, and really ends up focusing very intensively on consumption, on food, and particularly on meat consumption. Open floor, any thoughts on that question?
So I'll jump in on this one to say that Rhode Island, small and mighty, we don't have a ton of kosher restaurants here in the state. Our Jewish population is about 20,000, but what we have is a lot of vegan restaurants, vegetarian restaurants who have gotten their kosher certification because they don't have to worry about the meat dairy challenge. And so at least here at the Alliance, anytime we have to have meals catered, we really look first to some of those restaurants to be able to support them and grow and develop their work. And certainly within the community, those that keep kosher, these are the restaurants that they have available to them. So while we're not necessarily doing anything to outwardly encourage that, some of our partners are these restaurants that are vegan, vegetarian, and are also helping us to provide really high quality, really tasty kosher meals throughout our community.
Thanks, Adam. Another question was just asked around composting. Anybody do anything around food composting? I can say that we certainly do that here at Pearlstone, and there are Jewish community farms and spaces around the country that are doing composting in outdoor settings. Composting in more commercial or urban settings is a more challenging system, a session worth its own, a conversation worth its own focus. And we'd love, that is part of what the Chazon Seal can really do, is think through some of these specific systems on a technical level and figure out how to find the solutions that work for each community in each institution. And on that front, we got an important, very tactical question for you, Mark, which is on the Green Loan Fund, why loan those dollars and not provide grants? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So I wish that we had the capacity to make grants. We don't. We would be out $900,000 if we made the grant. But I think we would want the grantees or the loanees to feel engaged and understand the return on investment of what they're doing. 0% interest doesn't sound too exciting over the last years, but with inflation growing, I think that's going to become more important. And we also do a lot of collaborative work with the prospective applicant in terms of, finding the best vendors. We actually match them up with Baltimore Gas and Electric, who does provide some grants and special programs. So a lot of the folks that have partaken of the Green Loan Fund has received some grant money through our help by matching them up with various vendors or public utilities to help lower the costs. So I hope that answers the question to some extent.
Awesome, thank you. And now we have several questions, really understandably, asking around issues related to advocacy. So I want to cluster these together and ask you all to speak from your perspective. I know every federation has a different sort of approach to advocacy and to this issue in particular. So there's different issues around advocacy, right? One question is around, could we explore supporting dense walkable housing or at a city or state policy level, thinking about transportation. And that also can be not just advocacy on a political level, but as a community development opportunity to make walkable communities and reduce transportation. There's another question around environmental justice. Are there initiatives in these federations or any resources you would point to support environmental justice, again, potentially through advocacy or partnerships to support communities disproportionately affected by climate change? Another question on interfaith partnerships. Have we expanded beyond the Jewish community for collaboration? That could be around advocacy or other pieces. And then perhaps most importantly, I know I've heard this conversation a lot, both in Baltimore and elsewhere. How do we reach people in the community who consider climate change to be a partisan issue? So those are a bunch of questions. You can take that in any direction you like, and I'll give each panelist a chance to respond.
So our federation, we have an organization called Siegel, which is the Canadian organization for Israel and Jewish affairs, and it is our advocacy arm. And we're very pleased to see that and climate change became part of their agenda. I would say that one of the issues that we identified is that certainly among our major donors, many of them see this as a partisan issue. And so we are really trying, although I think the last year might have changed people's mind in terms of the reality of climate change. So we are working through CIJA to advocate at various levels of government. But I think more importantly is our ability to support and provide allyship with other organizations that are doing some of the very important advocacy work.
Thanks, Shelly. Mark, Adam?
Yeah, I will just add that in Maryland, there's a lot of attention on sustainability. And again, this comes out of the Global Climate Fest that I know Yakir attended. Just tree planting in terms of the worldwide goal of tree planting, and how does that translate to us as in just the United States of America and so forth downward. And so I know in the state of Maryland, we have a goal of how many trees we want to plant over the next several years. And again, as a board member of Baltimore Trees Trust, that's translated to planting 500,000 trees in Baltimore City over the next 5 years. I know that Pearlstone has done its own tree planting as contributing towards this, but these are the kind of things that I think we all should take an important aspect of, because the number for the global is just such a huge number. But if you, what's the expression? How do you eat an elephant a bite at a time? So, we all do our thing, and we'll get to that number as a group.
A vegan elephant, right? Right, Mark?
There you go.
Adam, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say we don't need elephants on this panel. I think it's an all of the above. So thinking about all of those different strategies, one of the earlier questions was about we're all in communities that are going to face sea level rise. And those are the kinds of existential threats that tend to move the conversation away from being partisan and move it into the conversation of practicality. How do we practically deal with what we know is going to be a big issue when basements are flooded because of a big storm, or the city is, we're dealing with brownouts because it's too hot. These become things that people realize they need to actually address. For us in the Jewish community, it's absolutely about not just working with our Jewish partners, but working with organizations that, quite frankly, have greater credibility around the issue of environmental justice because they've been doing it for a much longer time. So locally, that means for us an organization called Save the Bay. It means an organization like the Audubon Society, organizations that have been speaking about this issue for decades, locally and nationally, and working with them to say, this is an area where we're happy to be, we're happy to follow. We're happy to be part of this larger green agenda. And how can we, you tell us how we can mobilize and activate the Jewish community around these really critical core issues. And that's really how we've chosen to engage in this space, with humility and understanding that we can make a difference. We can do exactly what Mark said, take that, one bite at a time. And within our community, we can do little things, but I think that overall, we can do much more when we're working with others on pragmatic solutions to these immediate problems and bringing in the immediacy. And certainly, I don't want to dismiss the fact that climate change can be a partisan issue. It absolutely can. I think I'm probably the wrong panelist for this, being in a state that is heavily one party. Certainly makes it easier to have some of these conversations.
Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate that. And all three of these comments, really important, and really trying to find a way into this issue to get active for federations of all kinds and all different communities. And I think we see some important diversity on the panel, and really want to work with federations across the country to help figure out what makes sense for you. And on the advocacy front, really want to lift up and encourage folks to get involved with Dainu. They really are an important advocacy organization on climate issues, and also really want to celebrate the work that we've done here in Baltimore with the Associated and with the Baltimore Jewish Council. If you have, just speaking to everybody in the room here, if you have a local JCRC or federation that's not yet engaged in this issue and would like to learn about how we in Baltimore really have made tremendous progress from not really weighing in on climate or any environmental legislation a number of years ago to now every year, Pearlstone and the Associated and the Baltimore Jewish Council co-host an environmental advocacy forum lifting up environmental justice leaders and other issues in partnership with other environmental advocacy organizations, and then actually actively lobbying on it, not just from the corner of the Jewish community that cares about this at Pearlstone, but from the center of the Jewish community, from the Baltimore Jewish Council. I'm really happy to share that story and really want to support JCRCs and federations across the country into leaning into that advocacy work more. So really important conversation. And then just a couple last questions here before we move into a broader sort of focus group mode. From Morgan Long, have any of these federations divested their endowments from fossil fuels? If not, is it something they're in the process of doing? What do you think is holding back many Jewish federations and organizations from divesting their endowments from fossil fuels?
So let me take that, since I'm involved with investments. We have a very large portfolio of funds. And it is an issue that we've been working on for a couple of years now. We're talking about ESG, environmentally, social, and governance investing. And it is now part of our investment policy to ensure that we look at our managers' report card when it comes to ESG investing. This is a lot harder than you would think, because we're investing in funds, and then you got to go and look in the details of the mutual funds to look at all the various companies and what they are doing. It is fossil fuels, but it's also things like firearms and tobacco. Again, ESG is in the eye of the beholder. So from that standpoint, what you might think is ESG might not be ESG for someone else. So it is something we're tackling. We're actually looking at putting out a separate ESG fund. Our 401k plan actually has a social responsible fund as one of the investment options, something that, in fact, Rachel Siegel pushed for. And we have people investing in that, because those have some descriptions of what is socially responsible and what do they invest in or not. So this is something that I think not only Baltimore, but I believe some of the other larger federations with lots of endowment funds are looking into as well.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate that. Adam or Shelly, do you want to add anything to that?
I'll just add quickly, this is a topic that's come up in our boardroom as well, and continues to come up. And I continue to encourage those board members that push it to continue pushing it. I think the organization, we're invested with our local community foundation. And one of the things that attracted us to that is they are doing exactly what Mark said, working with advisors who are looking at ESG. But beyond that, they've set aside an impact investing fund for local initiatives and local things that are related to issues around climate and related to other really important issues around, anti-poverty and other pieces as well. And so to know that our money is being invested in a way that's not only that's supporting organizations, investments, things that are happening in Rhode Island to the betterment of our state is something that's really attractive to us as well. So finding other ways within that investment to address the climate crisis beyond just looking at how do we divest from problematic companies.
Thank you, Adam. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead, Shelly. Yeah.
Because we're so new in the process, the question has come up, but we have not pursued it. But I think, I would agree that some of the focus of the investment of funds, both from our foundation and federation, are moving more and more to projects that are both collaborative and have a sustainability focus. So that's probably going to be the easier part of the equation than the divestment, but it's certainly going to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Shelly, and thank you each for responding to this. We are really looking at this carefully at Chazon and Pearlstone. We don't have nearly any significant investments to think of ourselves, but what we have, we're certainly trying to move in the right direction, and really thinking about this as something that can and should scale in a big way, and looking to incorporate that into the Chazon seal and other initiatives that we undertake. Before we move to the focus group aspect in these last few minutes, one last question for the panelists, at least in this moment, just around community engagement, right? Federations are in the business of building big tent engaging people across the Jewish experience. And just want to ask for a little more commentary on how this work, implicates that priority for the Federation. Has this led to any new engagement? Is it the usual suspects or unusual suspects that you see coming to the table? Are there challenges or suggestions around how to do that well? And two questions that came in related to this. Basically, how do you engage more people around this? How do you feel the mandate to take bold systemic action? Rabbinic voices, donors, the demands of the emerging generation. And then another question is, for communities where the effects of climate change are more subtle, not as immediately catastrophic, how do we move the needle on this when community and different orgs might not have it on top of mind? So both sort of how to engage community, and to the extent that each of you have really led community engagement on this issue, how's that working out? Can you just give us sort of a report on the field of what that looks like from your perspective?
So I can go first. So we have a program called Jewish Volunteer Connection in Baltimore. They take on tons of volunteer opportunities and have 4 days of service and whatnot. They have started to really get into the sustainability area in terms of volunteer opportunities because people are asking for it. So whether it's cleaning cemeteries, cleaning streams, planting trees and whatnot, we're seeing more and more demand here. And I would encourage more use of the overall community and volunteer efforts to do the kind of things that we can do in helping our local communities be more sustainable and so forth.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll just add, I think, this isn't something that the next generation is waiting for the Federation to lead on. They are leading it themselves. And I think it behooves us as federations, as communities, to jump on board. When we were prepping for this panel last week, I spoke about, my daughter is in bat mitzvah prep right now, and her entire bat mitzvah project is focused on climate and climate justice and how she can help the synagogue further green. She's leading that effort. She wanted to do that. And I think that in a lot of ways, I think that how we approach this is finding ways for us to provide the tools that come with being a federation to scale something, but letting the ideas and letting the energy and the enthusiasm that are coming from members of our community be the driver of this, letting them lead and finding ways to lift that up is really the role that I see federations being able to play. It's where our comfort zone is, but it's also what we are good at. And so letting others take the lead while we sort of provide the tools to allow them to do that and to amplify and grow their efforts on a community-wide basis.
Thanks, Adam.
So we are still very much at the formative stage, but I would say even with our committee process that we have people at the table that I would describe as federation skeptics. These are people that probably wouldn't see themselves typically associated with a federation initiative that are participating. I get emails and calls regularly about people who are inquiring about the initiative. They're excited about the potential, the leadership training. I see that this is going to be a very positive initiative, not only for us to engage young adults, but I think that there's a lot of people that are on the margins of federation and are waiting to see us do some of the things that are very meaningful for them. It's also, I would say, it's opening up other opportunities for us to collaborate. There was a question earlier about interfaith collaborations. And during this past flood, where there are parts of the community were very seriously impacted, our federation was able to raise a considerable amount of funds. Every initiative that we did around the disbursement of funds was in partnership with either an ethnocultural or faith-based organization. And that has opened up our opportunities to build more collaboration, more partnerships. And I see this as a tremendous engagement tool going forward, as long as we remain authentic and real, and that we don't try to misrepresent what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Shelly. Really well said. Really helpful conversation. I hope everyone's learning as much as I am here. So we're now going to turn to everybody here to ask for some feedback on what's resonating and how we want to think about moving forward. So my colleague and superstar Bruce Spear just put into the chat some instructions for everybody, please, all 130 of us or so. If we can each type in those instructions into your phone, and we're going to share screen here and look at a word cloud of just how's this all landing for everybody. So once you type that in, tell us what from this session inspires you from this session. What are the ideas? One or two words that really feel powerful, relevant to you, meaningful, something that you could take back to your personal life, to your federation, and how we can move forward. We'll give this a few seconds for folks to join the word cloud and see what comes up. Awesome. Really great to see what's coming up here for everybody. It's great to see the inspiration. It's also fair to see that for at least some folks, maybe for all of us, this is a daunting challenge, and important to face that, and to see the words that are gaining the most traction, really ready for change, for progress, to take real action, whether that's solar advocacy, that there is possibility, there is community, and no surprise, I want to say, in a federation session, what's the biggest concept that resonates is collaboration. So really, that's awesome, and we'll share this with everybody too as part of the materials from this session. Really excited to see this. And then there's one other question we want to ask everybody to think about, which is, as we look at the ideas that were raised during this session, which we understand are not meant to be a comprehensive list of all the possibilities, all the actions that federations could take, but we have seen these ideas take hold. We'd love to ask everybody to think about which of these ideas have the most potential for scale. So in a moment, you can see on here, going to list these, no particular order here. I just want to ask you to rank them. Based on your experience, your sense of your federation or federations around the country, which of these ideas have potential, and can you put them in some ranked order? The Chazon Seal, just again, more context on that, is an institutional greening process. We work with you to do an audit and then to identify priorities. We heard from Mark about the Green Loan Fund, and from Adam and Mark on solar installations. We heard from everybody about advocacy and divestment. And youth empowerment, empowering the youth leadership and voices. The Jewish Youth Climate Movement is a co-sponsor and leader of the fest this year. So that's a really powerful piece as well. So yeah, what jumps out at you as has the most potential for scale? We'll give this another few seconds. Awesome. Really great to see this. And obviously, everybody can feel free to continue plugging in your answers there. But we can see what I think is great is to see that we do have some sense of relevance and replicability and scale with a few great ideas. And looks like it's pretty, at least in some cases, pretty even up at the top here. So really excited to see. Bruce, thank you so much. You can close that. And as we close up here, I want to just close by saying a couple of things. Being at Pearlstone for the last 15 years, seeing Pearlstone and Chazon's work and getting to work with a number of federations, it's really been inspiring to me to see how federations around the country are able to find the right path in holding sort of history and continuity and supporting core needs of the community, and really being able to lean into and respond to new challenges. How do we creatively, innovatively address them? And being in, I actually went to the United Nations Conference on Climate Change in Glasgow, Scotland in November, and bringing a Jewish voice there. It's really powerful to have the experience of these relationships and these initiatives. Obviously, we have a long way to go. Obviously, there's real opportunity and need to scale this action, but to bring in that context, the sense that the Jewish communities and Jewish leaders and institutions are stepping up to act, and we're doing that more and more together. I really want to thank Mark and Adam and Shelly and all the federation communities behind these folks, and to the Jewish Federations of North America for creating this support network and structure for us to do this important work. Really grateful to all the organizers and leaders of the Big Bold Jewish Climate Fest for making this possible. And I want to say to everybody on the call today, we at Chazon, we want to work with you. One of the questions was, what kinds of campaigns with synagogues and organizations on a local level are being initiated in active behavioral changes that we can make a difference in our personal lives? And Chazon has a breed Chazon, where you make a personal commitment to make change. And the Chazon Seal of Sustainability is an initiative designed to really make organizational change for federations, congregations, Jewish organizations of all kinds. We can put into the chat information to get in touch with us. Our amazing director of institutional greening, Karen Lewis, is on the call today. Really an amazing professional who's well situated to work with federations of all different sizes and kinds to do this work. And the more we can, as Jewish institutions and leaders, make commitments and actually set goals around this work, we all know as federations that builds momentum and builds coalition. Chazon will be building that kind of coalition across the Jewish world in the weeks and months to come. We hope to see many federations make those commitments. And we really, I think that one of the suggestions is, could there be a buddy system between federations? Could we mentor? That's exactly the kind of work that Chazon and working with the Jewish Federations of North America hope to do in the months to come. And we are now in the Shemitah year when we think about 7-year cycles and how we build sustainability and balance in our own lives and in our community lives. So this is a perfect conversation to do that. And the Jewish Youth Climate Movement youth leaders are really showing us the way. There was a session last night called Coming of Age Amidst the Climate Crisis. These teens were so impressive. And one of the things they said was, we hear all the time how adults feel hopeful about the future when they see the work we're doing, we the teens. But what we really need is for people in positions of power now to act now. Time is precious. And as we head into the New Year for the trees, and think about the tree of life that we're all intertwined with as part of the Jewish tradition, Jewish community, may we learn from our young ones, our emerging leaders, and may we find the strength and the support together to take action. Really looking forward to doing that with all of you. Thank you all for being here, and may we move forward in strength. Thanks, everybody. Be well.